Hi everyone, today's lesson is going to be about force diagram. So we use a force diagram to show the forces acting on an object, just like the one we see on the right. Now in a force diagram, we need to draw straight arrows to show forces. We label the forces like we have on the rocket. So the red arrow has been labeled with thrust, the green arrow with weight or gravity, and the blue one with drag. And the direction of the arrow shows the direction in which the force is acting. So if you see the thrust, the arrow is pointing up. So the thrust must be acting upwards. Drag and weight, the arrows are pointing down, so drag and weight must be acting downwards. And lastly, the longer the arrow, the bigger the force. So in this force diagram, thrust has the longest arrow, so it must be the biggest force, followed by the gravity, and then drag. So, opposite forces are those that act in the opposite direction to each other. So we have horizontal forces acting opposite to each other. So in this example we have drag pointing left or backwards and thrust pointing right or forwards, and they're opposite to each other. And the vertical forces, the up and down ones, we have the gravity pointing or acting downwards, and the normal or support force by the table acting upwards. And those are opposite to each other. Now, if you have one arrow pointing up and another arrow pointing towards left, those aren't opposite forces. Now, forces can either be balanced or unbalanced, and this determines the motion of the object. When we have two forces acting in opposite directions, and they have the same sizes, we say that the forces are balanced. And balanced forces, they don't change motion. For example, if the object is stationary, it will stay stationary. If the object was moving, it'll continue to move in the same direction and at the same speed or constant speed. So in this example, we have a car. The opposite forces, friction and thrust, caused by the engine, they have the same length and same size, so same length arrows and same size forces. So we say that those two forces are balanced. So there is no change in the speed. So if the car was moving, then they will move at a constant speed. If the car was stationary, then the car will remain stationary. Forces can be unbalanced if the two opposite forces have different sizes. And unbalanced forces can change the motion. For example, the object that was stationary can start to move. An object could speed up or accelerate or decelerate, and the object could also change direction. So in this example, we have greater or bigger thrust force than friction. So the car will be traveling forwards and it'll be accelerating. Okay, so let's look at net force. Net force is the overall force on an object. So you can find out the net force by subtracting smaller force from a bigger force. So if you look at this example, you can't quite see it because of me. Yeah, let's move me down. Okay, so the net force on this object is 3 because we have the bigger force, thrust, which is 5 newtons, and we have smaller force, 2 newtons, which is friction. And if you subtract 5 minus 2, the net force is 3 newtons. So we can say that the object is moving to the right with the net force of 3. And you can draw it like this. So this is how you would draw the net force. Okay, and always remember, all forces are measured in newtons. Okay, so I have a question for you. What is the net force of this car when the forces are balanced? 0, right? Because both friction and engine or thrust force in this example, they must equal to each other. So when you subtract the same numbers, the net force is going to be 0. Now, let's go work on this question. And you can pause this video to work on this. Okay, so here are the answers. Yes, this car has a net force because the forces are unbalanced, and the net force is 15 newtons, and the car will be traveling forward or accelerating forward. Okay, now I want you to have a go at this. Yep, you can pause this video again. Okay, so let's go through the questions. So the question asks you, or says, as the skydiver goes down with his parachute, there are two main forces acting on him. One of them is drag and the other weight or gravity. Question 1 says, in which direction does the drag force act? And what about weight and gravity? In this example, gravity, which is always the case, will act downwards, and drag will be acting upwards. So the type of drag will be air resistance in this case. Okay, question 2. When he first opened his parachute, the drag force was 850 newtons, whereas gravity was 700 newtons. What is the net force? And I have made a mistake. It's not Fw, that's weight force. It's Fn. Okay, so we can calculate it by minusing big force. So big force minus smaller force, right? So we have 850 newtons minus 700 newtons, and that gives us 150 newtons as our net force. Okay, and question 3 says, describe the skydiver's motion when he first opened the parachute. And when I say motion, it could be constant speed, stationary, accelerating, or decelerating. And in this case, the guy will be decelerating because we have greater drag force acting upwards than the weight force pulling him down. So he will be slowing down. Awesome. So this was the end of the lesson, of the video anyway, but you still have Education Perfect to do. So you need to complete that by today, or tomorrow was it? You can check that out. Okay, thanks for listening, guys.